Hey, folks, this is Jim Horn, and we've got another episode of Black and White Photography. And today we are welcoming photographer Richard Smith with some great street photography. So let's get with it. Okay, Richard, here we are. Another Black and White Photography podcast. And I saw Richard's submissions in the Black and White Photography magazine in February. And I said to myself, that's really stuff I like. And I think we ought to get it on the photography show here and talk about it and show it to people that want to see it on the YouTube, or people can listen through the audio on the Black and White Photography podcast. So, Richard, once again, thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
So Richard, how long have you been working, doing photography?
I started in 2010. My wife decided we were going to go to Africa for a vacation, which I was not really enthusiastic about because you have to get shots to go to Africa. But I'm a lawyer. One of my clients was a photographer, and he was just over the moon about my going because it's a bucket list thing for photographers. And he asked what camera I was taking, and I had a little point and shoot, and he just said that will not do. So after some coercion, persuasion, I ended up getting a Nikon D5000. Then I found out you have to get the lens too. And I was totally intimidated by everything. I'd never done anything with cameras before. And I took it out one time before we left. But I knew that being in Africa, like if it's a bucket list place, there's going to be lots of photographers there, so I can have people to ask questions up to. And then I did read the instruction manual on the 20-hour flight to Africa. And when I got over there, everybody in our group had new cameras, but they didn't know how to operate them. And within a day, everybody started asking me questions because it turned out I was the only one who'd read the instruction manual. But it turned out it was okay.
You're a lawyer, right? Lawyers do
right.
that.
Yeah. But it turned out it was okay because I think we were saved by what mathematicians call the law of large numbers, which basically means in this case, when you take 10,000 exposures, just by dumb luck, some of them come out in focus.
I'd agree with that. I have found through my many, many years of photography that if you can get 10%, you're doing really well. 5%, you should still be happy, right?
Yes.
So do you still use the Nikon D5000, or did you move to something else?
I have moved up the ranks, and my main camera currently is a Nikon Z7 II. And now if I go over to Europe, then my main camera is a Nikon Z7 II. But I also have a Z6 that I have converted for infrared photography, and I'll use my cell phone. I've gotten some very good shots with my cell phone. And then a few weeks ago, I got this little guy, which is a Leica Deluxe 8. I'm in a movement to try and simplify my life and see if I can go out and shoot with having less equipment with me. So I'm getting acquainted with that camera.
Yeah, I've got the Deluxe 8. I think you're going to be extremely happy with it. And I will say that the interesting thing about photography is that when you start out with one camera, like you did with the D5000, they seem to have babies. They seem to multiply, right? You can never get away with one. And that's okay. That's all part of the hobby.
Well, when I picked my second camera, my wife, who was then not taking photographs, but she's a gardener, she picked up my first camera and started taking photographs of her flowers. And she has progressed from there. Now she has switched over to Fuji. She is a member of the Fuji cult. And she did it because the camera body fit her hand better, but she's sworn her loyalty to Fuji.
Okay, good for her. Good for her. One other final question for the listeners. Do you do your own processing?
I do.
Okay.
I primarily use Lightroom, but I'll use Photoshop too, mostly for distractions. And if I need a layer, then I'll do that. And then for the plugins, we use the Nick Suite and Topaz too. Those are the main ones.
Okay, super. Well, let's start to take a look at some of these great photographs, and you can describe them and talk about them. And as I've often said in these podcasts, this is not a critique. This is enjoying somebody's work. So hang in there, Richard. Now I have to tell you, I really enjoyed this photograph when I looked at it. There's just there's feeling to it, in my opinion. Why don't you talk to us about this?
Well, I was downtown in Chattanooga doing some street photography, mostly architectural photography. And the woman, whose name's Faith, she and he are a homeless couple. And she came up to me and asked if I would take their picture and said, I just want to see it on the back of your camera, see what it looks like. So I took some shots and showed her. And then when I got home and worked with them, this one came out. And you're right, it struck me. And I went and I had a copy made for them. I even had it laminated, and I tried to find them, but I never could.
Oh, good for you. A lot of people just stopped taking the photograph. But I'll tell you what, when you said they were homeless, I would never have known that. And I think that's congrats to you. And I'll tell you why, in my opinion, because, sometimes, homeless people are pretty susceptible, they're in bad shape and so forth. But here's a couple that they're homeless. I would never have known that. My first impression was, I think they're a motorcycle gang or something. And I think that's good, because I think you were able to show there's a humanity here that comes through. It's not homelessness. It's a humanity. Two people that really, whether they're in love with each other, married or whatever, it doesn't make any difference. I think it's just a great photograph. So
I would agree. That's the humanity of it. Just is what struck me when I got home and could see it on the big screen.
Exactly. Okay. Aha. I saw this. First person I thought of was Cartier-Bresson. I've seen a lot of his work up close and personal. And you framed this. I don't know. Sometimes these kind of things happen, folks. For those folks that are listening in, this is it. It almost looks like picture frames. I'm sure it's some architectural work. Why don't you describe this photo for us, Richard, and tell us where it was at? And it's sort of serendipity, isn't it?
It really is. What you're looking at here are the supports for the Market Street Bridge. And that's a bridge that crosses over the Tennessee River in downtown Chattanooga. And I had been down there photographing the river, which would be off to your left is a park. And then off to the right is a parking lot. So I was going back to my car, and I noticed there was this father playing with his two children over there under the bridge. And when I got to this point, I was always ask myself where the light's coming from, and I could see the light and the angles, and I was just looking at it. And then this little child who's like maybe 3 just walked over there and stood for a second. And that's when I snapped the picture. And my title for this is The Human Element.
Yeah, I mean, that human element does it all, and it says it all, and it puts, having that in there puts it in perspective. I mean, it's really great. I looked at, it could be anything. It could be picture frames, but your description of it, and then waiting for that decisive moment when the kid walks in there, that just made the picture, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah, it really did. Wow. Okay. Let's get to the next scene. There we go. Now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right. This is in Bruges in Belgium, which is one of those cities that's a World Heritage Center or city because of all the medieval architecture that they have preserved there. So we were there on vacation, and there's a lot of canals in Bruges, and my wife and I were in a canal, and we're passing under this bridge. And as I look up, there's this girl who was about 6, and she's up on the parapet of the bridge, which is about 15 feet above where I am in this boat. And the parapet's at most a foot wide, and she is skipping along on this parapet. And I look up there, and there's nothing I can do. I'll like a god for a second, and then the voice said, "Take the picture," which I did.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that no one's looking at her. None of the adults on that bridge have any idea what she's doing. So as we were starting to pass under the bridge, we heard from off to the right there's a woman who was in a second-story window has opened her window and is saying something in very emphatic Flemish, which I interpreted to be, "Somebody hit that girl." And by that time, we passed under the bridge, and I never knew the outcome of that. I didn't hear any plop in the water, so I assumed she made it to the other side. But I just saw that, and my title for that was just "The Invisible Girl," because she is totally serendipitous. I looked up, and there she was. She totally fearless, just skipping along on the top of that parapet.
Yeah, and I think that says a lot, just as the prior photograph says a lot about having that camera ready and shooting it, whether it's your iPhone, and I'm sure that in this case it was your camera, having it ready and shoot. And that's how you get these moments or these decisive. I mean, this could fit into a Bresson catalog, in my opinion, just as the other one could, because it's that kind of serendipity kind of thing that just happened at that very moment. It's the way the people are sort of ignoring her on the bridge, like she's not there, and that's
Invisible.
Yeah, she's indivisible or invisible. Yeah, that's a great photograph, and by the way, it's also processed very well technologically and technically and so forth. It's a really great photo. Great. Okay, let's take a look at the next one and the final one. Ah, yes, motorcycle. Motorcycle. Look at these two old guys. Why don't you tell us about this?
Well, this is in a small town up in the Sequatchie Valley, and one of my things is photographing small towns because they're struggling. Their people are just hanging on there. Joel Meyerowitz used to say that when he took street photography in New York, he says that street photography was jazz. But when I go to these small towns and you see the store windows, they're closed or storefronts empty, I hear Iris DeMint singing Our Town. Because, the people here are, their roots are here and they're hanging on, but they're leaving not because they want to, but because they think they have no other choice. And then you see these two. And my first working title for this was Andy and Opie, The Later Years, but I just went with Easy Riders because I was remembering from when I was growing up in the early 1970s, that movie was very popular and what those characters might look like if they were still around and riding today.
I used to have a what they call a spider motorcycle, and what caught my eye here, and I used to ride with some guys like that. No longer do, but I used to ride with some guys that they were all older. But the breakfast sign, the big deal was they always had to go to breakfast. It wasn't lunch; it was always breakfast. And that brought, and I'm sure anybody that rides a motorcycle that takes a look at this photograph is going to say, yeah, this is exactly how it is. These two older guys on their motorcycle, one guy's got a trike, and I I don't know if the other guy's got a trike. Doesn't really make much
They
difference.
both are. They
both are. But you know, taking and the other interesting thing about the photograph is that, I mean, it's tack sharp, as it very, very good. I can read the breakfast sign, and and it's all done in black and white, and it deserves to be in black and white. It's that kind of photograph. Yeah, that is really good. Go ahead.
Well, you know, when I take these stories, I try to say, or take these photographs, I say, you know, what's the story here? And then the question is, well, is the story better told in black and white or in color? So that's one of the big decisions. And this one was just clearly a black and white image.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. Some, you know, although this is black and white photography, I certainly do things in color yet, because some things deserve to be in color. Otherwise you don't, you know, sometimes you get too much of that, the tonal overlaps where you can't see, you know, you can't differentiate between one thing and another and so forth. And color certainly helps you do that. But so what are your, I mean, when I look at this street stuff, and it's really good, what are your plans going into the future? What are you, where are you guys going? And, you know, and what's your next photographic adventure?
Well, that's probably this weekend when we'll be out shooting with some friends, but I'm looking forward to a trip in June. We're going up to New York City, and we're going to spend 2 days with Phil Penman doing street photography up there. So we're looking forward to that. And then in September, we're going out to Washington State, and we're going to do a workshop with Bruce Warrenbaum out there.
Oh, he's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking forward to that too.
Well, I think you've got a penchant for street photography. You've got an eye for it, you know, and a lot of people shy away from street photography because it's sort of like a one-on-one kind of confrontation. I don't want to say confrontation, but it's a one-on-one encounter. And, you know, you feel like you might be violating somebody's space, and so really not. Most people really don't care. The guy that I think about that really violated space was Bruce Gilden, you know, the guy with the flash in your face. I don't know if you've seen
that. Yeah, that was, yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's still alive. But anyway.
Well, yeah, well, I that's one of the reasons that I use sometimes my iPhone for street photography, and why I got the smaller camera, because the smaller camera helps me kind of fade more into the background, so I get the authentic person. If you point the big camera at them and they say it, is sometimes it's like you pointed a gun at them, you know, you get a different reaction.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Richard, I certainly appreciate you having on the show, come on the show, showing us some great photographs, and I mean they're great photographs. And as I said to you prior to the show, it's always difficult to get people on and show their work, but I'd like to get more people on and, you know, show a lot of work. People think they're quote unquote amateur photographers. I don't see photographers that way. I see, you know, guys like us that go out and shoot all the time. We're photographers. You know, there's no amateur in front of that word. So, and I think your work here exemplifies exactly what I've said. So hang in there. When you go out with the street boys in New York City and with Bruce, I think you're going to have a great time, aren't you?
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, Richard, take care. Thanks again for being on.
Thanks for having me.